Welcome to part 3 of this video series where we've been covering the basics of using functions and groupings in Sigma. In parts 1 and 2, we learned how to create groupings and perform basic calculations with those groupings using aggregate functions. Now that we've covered the fundamentals of groupings, let's perform some more advanced calculations with them in order to view more detailed breakdowns of our data. To do so, we're going to want to use window functions. Window functions are functions that perform a calculation across a set of specific rows within a range that is limited by the current group of the next higher grouping level. The window is the specified range on which the function operates, whether that be an entire grouping or a specific set of rows in that grouping. With window functions, we can perform many useful operations, including calculating cumulative revenue over a specified period, determining a moving 3-month average, and ranking rows in a grouping by their value, in addition to many other applications. When you want to use a window function, you must create groupings to define the windows that you want to use for your calculation, then create a second lower level grouping to define the window of your window function. If you're using a window function in the formula of a column at the highest grouping level, or if there are no grouping levels at all, the entire table acts as the boundary of the window. Now that we've covered the fundamental concepts of window functions, it's time to try a simple example of them in action using the group table we made in parts 1 and 2. If you haven't seen those videos, they're a great way to learn the basics of grouping in Sigma. If you feel confident with your grouping skills already, make sure you create a table that uses the plugs electronics hands-on lab data from the Sigma sample database as a data source and group your table by year, month, region, and order number, and assign the corresponding calculations you see here in the editor panel on screen in order to follow along with the rest of the video. Also, please keep in mind that the plugs electronics hands-on lab data is updated daily, so the numbers you see on my screen may not necessarily match the ones on yours. For our first introduction into window functions, let's try creating a new column next to monthly revenue with a formula of row number. This row number column numbers the rows of the current grouping level. The numbering is enforced by the higher level group, so it starts with the first row of this window and continues down each of the rows in the group until it stops with the last row of this window. The higher grouping level is year of date, so the numbering restarts for the next group, which is the next set of months in the next year, and so on across the rest of the table. Now let's try something a little bit more interesting by creating a new column to the left of row number and applying a formula using the cumulative sum window function that calculates the cumulative monthly revenue by entering cumulative sum of monthly revenue into the formula bar. We'll name the column cumulative revenue. When creating window functions, make sure that any columns used by your window function are in the same grouping level as that window function, or else you will get a multiple values error. Just like the row number column, the cumulative sum column calculates the cumulative sum by starting with the first row in the window and working its way down to the last before starting over with the next window. Because the windows used by a window function in Sigma are controlled by the higher grouping level, remember that higher grouping levels influence the calculations being performed. For example, if we move store region to be the highest grouping level, it will change the input and therefore the output of the calculation. As you can see, regional revenue now calculates the sum of regional revenue for all years we have data for every region. This means the cumulative revenue function is calculating the cumulative revenue of monthly revenue, which is the sum of regional revenue, which is now the highest grouping level. This significantly changes how our data is represented and calculated. There are many different kinds of window functions. Sigma provides cumulative window functions, moving window functions, shifting window functions, and ranking window functions. Every window function is listed here in our function index according to their type, with a brief description of how they work and with links to further information about each specific function's syntax. In the next video, we will go into more detail on these different categories of window functions and when and how to use them with your data. For more information on the topics covered in this video, as well as anything not covered, make sure to check out help.sigmacomputing.com to read our documentation, tutorials, and guides. Until next time, take care and happy calculating.